Welcome to another episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. Today we're looking at an essential oil that I think is gifted from one of the most generous plants on this entire planet when it comes to essential oils. There's the bitter orange tree, which gives us one oil from its leaves and its twigs, one from its fruit, and today we're going to dive into the beautiful, precious essential oil that comes from its blossoms, better known as neroli. How are you today, Liz?
I'm really good, thanks, Adam. And I completely agree with that. I think oranges generally, we underestimate how important that plant is. And
Yes.
yeah, as an aromatherapist, it's really important to kind of think about just how many different ways you can use an orange tree.
I must think, I know many plants around, coriander or cilantro gives us oils from the leaf and the seed. So we get two oils from that. There's many trees and plants that give us two oils, but yeah, there's not too many that give us three. I don't know. Can you get any? I've never actually come across any other citrus blossoms apart from neroli. Have you? Like a lemon blossom or
The
something?
oils, I don't know the answer to that. There's lots of pettigrains, but that's twigs and branches, isn't there? But
Yeah.
I have to. Funny you should ask that because I do think the most beautiful thing I've ever smelt in my whole life was a grapefruit blossom. So
Ah,
I went to the botanical gardens in Oxford, and all along the river, they've got them in like pots in the summer, in the spring and summer. And I was like, "What is that smell?" And it was quite a small tree, like a bush, really, and it was
hmm.
just so glorious. I've never smelled anything like it. So if somebody really wants to know what I want them to make, I would love grapefruit blossom, please.
Yes, we'll put that on the list. I'd be grateful for any citrus blossom, but yeah, now I'm really intrigued to smell that one for sure.
Beautiful.
But we do have neroli. Neroli's got a long history of being used in different ways. But how do you like to use neroli essential oil?
Um, I do use it a lot, but only for a few things. So when I was younger, my mum made, as we know, pots of cream, and she made a neroli and carrot cleanser. And through my life, I've never found anything as good as that. You know, the carrot's so good at cleansing, but the neroli is so good at just putting this beautiful sheen on your skin. So I really rate it for skincare, especially if somebody is older or actually if they've smoked. You know, it really refines the skin when when it's quite damaged and rough. For mood, I don't think there's anything that even comes close to it for anxiety, and for depression, but anxiety in particular. Anything to do with the menopause, fantastic oil. Everybody talks about clary sage. I think there's some people who can, some people who can't. Everybody can with neroli. But actually, one of our viewers, Holly Simpson, gave me a great tip. So probably about 4 months ago, I got caffeine poisoned. So I can't have any kind of stimulants at all. I can't have caffeine in tea, coffee, or any of that stuff. And I'd gone over to my son's and he'd been too blooming lazy to get up out of bed and make drinks. So he'd sent out, as the young of today do, sent out to Starbucks for coffee. And it did say decaf on the cup, but it definitely wasn't. And my heart was just going, and I got headaches. I was seeing double. Everything was really bad. So, but managed to settle that down. But then 3 days later, my body went into withdrawal from it, and I was really poorly. And I put on Facebook, I'm really sorry, I can't do anything today. I can't answer any of your questions or anything because I just feel so bad. And Holly had said, I've read once, if you drink orange blossom water, it can really help. Oh my goodness, I had some in the cupboard because I cook with it a lot. 10 minutes later, I was back to my normal self. So,
Wow.
so I would say to people that is a massive, massive use. Now, when I've looked at the physiology, nobody has ever researched how it works on the adenosine receptor, as far as I can see. But without a shadow of a doubt, it was fast. An adenosine receptor has a big part to play in pain. So, for example, one of the reasons I can't have caffeine is it makes me want feel like I need a wee all the time. And so anybody who has that kind of urge incontinence, that can often be adenosine receptor. So again, Neroli would be really helpful for that. And any kind of gynecology, really, I think, and also aphrodisiac. But I think like not like your lusty aphrodisiac, but like that romantic first night married love, you know.
Very much so. When you're talking about the caffeine and that, would you expand that to say that anyone who was trying to maybe quit smoking or come off any other addiction, it could be one of the oils that might support them in that way?
Don't know. No idea is the answer to that. But I would say, so if we go into the physiology a bit more, so we know, so there's quite a lot of scientific evidence into Neroli. Not to say does it work, they absolutely know that it does, but to try to understand why it does. So there was a trial, should have learnt my dates, haven't, but a recent trial on mice for epilepsy, and they used a drug called flumemazole, which is what they use if somebody has like overdoses on benzodiazepines, or if they are not coming out of anaesthetic very well. So they use flumemazole to get them out of it. And the reason why it's important to say that is because we know very clearly what flumemazole does. It works on what's called the GABA-A receptor, which is the main receptor of the nervous system, and does other things as well. But I'll talk about that in a minute. And when they treated the mice with Neroli, they were inhaling Neroli. They found that these were epileptic mice, I should have said. They'd been made to have epilepsy. They didn't have as many seizures. There was a longer gap between the seizures, and actually the worst bit, the best bit of the worst information is fewer of these mice died. But what they found was if they used flumemazole, then that would be wiped out. The Neroli had no effect. So they were able to say it's definitely the GABA-A receptor. So GABA-A is right the way through the nervous system, and it's the main thing that calms us down. But also, it's on really strange things, like it's on liver tissue. It's on placenta, would you believe? So there are olfactory receptors on placenta. So it's a long step, but you could actually say maybe when you inhale it when you're pregnant, that will actually go through the placenta. We know that the essential oils cross the placental barrier, so we could say it's calming for baby. We don't know that, but potentially it could be. It's also in Lael cells, which are in the lining of the testes, so potentially why that is for sexual drive. So all of these things, if you think about all the different places that it touches, inhaling it can do so many different things. But we also know that pain signaling reduces when you've got GABA in the system. If you've got low levels of GABA in the body, you will feel pain more. But then, so that kind of feeling sensitivity is definitely a thing. But then they took that information about these rats and said, right, we know about GABA-A. We also want to know about how it affects the nervous system more. So this time, these rats were ones that were made in the phenotype of having autism or OCD. And so what they watched was, do these mice act differently if they're given Neroli? So this time they were drinking it. The first time they were inhaling it, this time they were drinking it. So what they were interested in was, will they come out into the arms of the maze, more into the bright side, more than the dark side? So in other words, were they more courageous? But also, did they bury their marbles, more or less? So the reason for the marble burying test is that mice really like burying, so they'll do that anyway. But if they're stressed, if they think, where's my food? There's not enough food, or there's not enough water, or there's a predator, or where shall I hide my babies? In all those cases, they will dig. So how many of the marbles they dig, hide, shows, have they are they trusting more? Are they trusting less? And they buried significantly fewer marbles. Now, the reason why I talk about this in answer to your question was because this was designed to be able to understand how people who stim might act. So if somebody is autistic, or they might have like the rubber band that they keep pulling, or they might keep touching their face, or, you know, and they do lots of different things that are just like repetitive, and they get worse if they're stressed. And likewise, you'll have those children that unfortunately bang their heads on walls over and over again. So this is exactly the same test and exactly the same physiological process as they would develop drugs for those people. So in answer to your question, my ex used to smoke a lot, and one of the things that he did when he gave up was he got an elastic band and he used to pull it, and it was like this fidget that he got all of the time, and it was a nervous fidget. So is it stimming? I don't know, but it's very closely related, I think. And so that repetitive habit forming thing, it certainly could be helped, I think, by Neroli.
Yeah, wow. And it's interesting talking about people on the spectrum as well. You know, when I think of Neroli, for me, Mike, I've got kind of a collection of stories where it's been really helpful for myself and for other people. And I don't know if you're the same, Liz, but normally when I think of different oils, there's certain words that kind of come up. And when it comes to Neroli, when I'm thinking physical, trauma is the one that comes up. And I remember a story of a good friend of mine in Australia, another aromatherapist, who she would work with children on the spectrum in like a care facility, and occasionally they would get irritated, and they'd get quite violent. Now, legally, you can't restrain them, so you just have to stand back. But one of her practices was she'd put Neroli on her wrist and just wave it in front, going shh. And she found that just that wafting had this amazing effect at calming them down as well. For me, I remember, you know, talking about pain. You know, you're getting old when you're running along the beach and you do a little jump. And one day I did this, and it felt like someone had thrown a cricket ball at my calf muscle. And I turned around and I'm like, where did that cricket? It was agony. And then I realized it wasn't a cricket ball. It was just this little leap in the air. I'd actually torn my calf muscle. Now,
Yeah.
it was absolute agony. And, you know, I reached for all the different oils that we would use for pain and anti-inflammatory and massage them in. But I also reached for Neroli and I popped that up and down my spine. Because when you think about whenever we're in pain, what do? We tense up. And I find Neroli with that beautiful, relaxing kind of energy is really good at helping in any kind of, you know, just soothing that. And that's why with my sister, when she's had given birth to her two sons, Neroli, you know, we always think of, you know, getting the clary sage in there for birthing day, but also Neroli is a really beautiful one for the body's just gone through a friggin' ordeal. Let's help it to just calm back down as well. So, you know, whether it be giving birth, an injury, a car accident, or any kind of shock or trauma, I find Neroli to be a really kind of powerful one at helping to just calm us back down.
Yeah, and I mean, we often talk about how good lavender is, and we'll say the reason that lavender's so good as a soothing or as an anti-inflammatory or as an analgesic is because of linalool. Well, we've got 42% in linalool in most Nerolis. I mean, that's almost half of the oil is anti-inflammatory and pain-killing and analgesic. So regardless of, like, I mean, everybody will use an oil differently. It wouldn't be my go-to for pain, simply because I don't automatically go in my head there, and the oils, like the blend doesn't come into my head, you know, I blend with lavender. but of course, those, you know, with linalool, with all of that anti-inflammatory, analgesic, but also antidepressant, fantastic. So it's such a very, very I was going to say flexible oil. That's not the word I'm trying to say, but you know, got so many different uses. Yeah, versatile.
I guess to clarify, I wasn't using the Neroli specifically for the pain, but you know, when we're in pain, we tense our body up. Like we get, you know, that's hurting, and my calf was hurting, but my whole body was, and I was using the Neroli just to calm the rest of my body down and focus on that. And that's what I found it really helpful for in that context.
I think fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Also, talking about studies, I was trying to re-find it. I remember reading it a few years ago. There was another study that basically 2 rooms, a control group, and 1 room where they were diffusing Neroli essential oil. And the 2 groups were given tasks to lateral thinking outside of the square. And they actually found that those that were breathing in the Neroli far outperformed those that weren't when it came to thinking outside of the box. And lateral thinking and that type of thing as well, which really I found really interesting from a scientific point of view and a mental point of view. But it really kind of leads in also to the deeper meanings of Neroli, which I really resonate with, which comes up with my other keyword for Neroli. Trauma is one, and the other one is enticement. So throughout the years, I've kind of gathered all these different stories that you hear about how Neroli has been used to entice people. So, for example, it is said that nymphs would use the scent of Neroli to seduce young men and women out of their bedchambers at night and into the forest for a night of pleasure. It is rumored, I think you alluded to it before, that it's often the blossoms are scattered on newlywed beds to help them relax on their first night. Ladies of the night were said to use it to try and seduce, their clients. And there is some, a bit of a rumor that Cleopatra may have anointed her sails with Neroli and jasmine when she sailed up the Nile to go and seduce Mark Antony. So I think it helps us to relax. It helps us to get over these stressful kind of situations, but then it beckons us out of our comfort zone and explore what else life has to offer, and especially on that intimacy level, not just necessarily romantic or sexual intimacy, but I think even just feeling comfortable being open with people.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think it has a very balancing action to it. And if you think about how it would take away all that nervousness, of course, that's a big part when it comes to sexuality, isn't it? A lot of people, because it doesn't matter how courageous you are, if you've got like a social dynamic going on of like, well, nice girls don't act that way, or all of those things. But after a while, your body will take over. But if you can calm your brain down to stop arguing with you, I think that is a tremendous thing. But I think I was going to look for my Tongue in the Trees cards and say the poem, but I can't remember it. I must remember to read it in the masterclass to read the poem. But yes. There was on the card, the keyword that we have is observation, and the reason for that is because I think it's very good for manifesting any kind of thing that you want to do. And I think that it kind of makes you aware of what your thoughts are. So I can remember when I first started researching stress, reading the statistic that we have around about 80,000 thoughts per day. I mean, that's a phenomenal amount. And that about 90% of those are negative. And I was like, that can't be right. That can't be right. But actually, when I watch myself, and I am one of those people that can really brood, I was like, well, there's another one, there's another one, there's another one. Now, if you are only trying to manifest with like 10% of your mind, it's not going to be that successful, is it? Whereas Neroli goes, what did you just say? What did you just say to yourself? And you kind of become kinder. And I do think that this is the beginning of the orange for me, because I always talk about how orange is the oil to go to if you feel like you've been slapped with the ugly stick. It's like you do feel much happier and more positive end off. but of course it's birthed in that flower before you get to the orange. And so we're right back to, well, yeah, I'm not in a positive mindset, but I'm the beginnings of it, you know, the tantalizing beginnings. And so, yeah, I do think observation is a big keyword for me.
I think, you know, it's interesting. Before, if we want our life to bear fruit, then working with Neroli is the precursor for that in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean,
Yeah.
so we're actually going into a really important time of the year in terms of Melissa. So we know that Artemis was worshipped as the queen bee in the new moon and the full moon, but she has like a conflation with another goddess called Hegemony. So the goddess Hegemony is the goddess of plants, but kind of autumnal sort of vibration of it, and she's the goddess that gives power to make things bloom and bear fruit. And so this time of year, certainly in the northern hemisphere, is really important for just like watching how the flowers are dying, but they're becoming something so much more useful. And watching how things come to fruition. So this is a really good time for watching your thoughts and thinking about, right, well, I didn't manage to make this come to fruition already, but so how can I work with the energies next year to be able to make things come to fruition better?
Love that. I get asked often a question of like, which oils are the best ones for the full moon? And that often my answer is a bit more complex and it depends on what your plans are. But if I kind of had to pick my top oils for full moon work, jasmine will always be number one, and we can explore that at a later date. But neroli, I think, is a beautiful one at number two, because a lot of the time when we think about generally what people like to do on the full moon is they like to think about full moon. Here's a wish. We make a wish, whatever way we do that in type of thing. But what we often do is we send the order out and then we wait for it to come. And when we look at what we've been talking about, even from that study where they found people stepping outside their box, being enticed out of their comfort zone, if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got. And what you were saying about changing our mindset and changing, you know, in order for something to become or manifest in our lives, it needs to be a vibrational match. So if you're going, I'm a failure, I'm poor, I'm sick all the time, whatever that may be, you're broadcasting that out. And Neroli, I think, is beautiful on that awareness of our thoughts, but even on that beckoning us out to go, okay, well, if you want a better partner, if you want a better job, if you want better health, what can you do to become a vibrational match to that? And I know I often, when I'm doing tarot readings, I'm talking to people and they're like, will I meet him? And I'm often saying, I can see him. You're in a department store. He's on level 7. And at the moment, you're wandering around level 4. And I need you to work out, how do you get yourself up there? And so many people are worried about, what's the universe delivering to me? When do I get it? When do I get the man? Why can't I get a man? Why can't I get that? And they're not looking in the mirror. And I think Neroli is a beautiful one to help us be aware of our thoughts, our actions, and go, how can I be the change I want to see in this world?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And from the point of view of what you were saying about, you know, looking for the partner, if you're in a weakened state, those nasty people, they're going to target, you know. But if you are always vibrating a positive, strong, you know, a state of affairs, then you are going to get a better partner. And enabled to do to do that, you know, manipulating your brain about how you think with essential oils is real trickery, really. It is, but it's clever. It is clever trickery. So that I think that's the first thing. But I think what you were saying about the full moon is absolutely right. I think it's got a very different kind of vibration of full moon now, and a different way of working with it. So for Neroli is so peaceful, you know. It's whereas jasmine's like richly voluptuous, you know. It's attracting all the moths, but Neroli is almost like scrying on the still water and seeing the moon on the water and just kind of looking into it. So, you know, we talk about these Melissa priestesses and the things that they did, and there were lots of different ways of divination, but one of their main ways of divining was the black mirror. gazing into the black mirror. So there's like a black sheen over the top of the mirror, and you kind of can't necessarily see yourself, but you see the reflection. And that's a very, very kind of Neroli feeling of kind of just looking what's happening, what's moving around the ether at the moment, you know, what's changing, not necessarily participating in it, purely observing it.
Now, we often love to talk a little bit about astrology. Would you associate Neroli primarily with the moon? I don't, but I'd be interested to know what you do.
No, Venus, I would say.
Venus. I'm actually going to find I attribute this one to Uranus. You know, obviously, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they have fewer planets kind of associated with them because they were planets that were discovered a little bit later. But I find, you know, Uranus is obviously, you know, what I love about it from an astronomy point of view is whereas all the other planets as they go around the sun are doing like spinning like tops, and that's why obviously on Earth we get day and night as we go around the sun. Uranus actually rolls like a ball, so it's already odd in that way. It's named after a god who was castrated and his testicles were thrown into the oceans for Venus to be born. So, and he always obviously represents, you know, innovation, change, transformation, and different things like that. Obviously very relevant now because Uranus on the 29th of this month actually goes into retrograde. So he will, in our lives, he spends, 7 years in each sign. So we kind of had these generations that are grown or that are born with Uranus in different planets. And based on what your Uranus sign is, so which constellation he was in when you're born, tends to be where you and your generation or your people like to bring change. So whether it be in how we approach money or how we approach relationships or how we approach organized structures and all these different things, when he's direct, he kind of helps that transformation happen. And Neroli is a beautiful one because as we've been talking about, it helps us to get over trauma of the past. It helps us to think outside the square and beckons us outside of our comfort zone and relaxes us and go, change is okay. Uranus is like, come on, let's transform in that way. But as we go into Uranus retrograde, obviously Uranus kind of, I always say, when a planet goes retrograde, it goes on holidays and leaves us to ourselves. Change won't happen as much. So we'll all find this frustration in our life is starting to get mundane. Things aren't progressing. Things aren't evolving how they should. We're going backwards because we're not going forwards. And this can cause a lot of tension, angst, and anger and frustration in people. And again, Neroli not only helps us to think outside the square for that innovation, but also calms us as well.
So yeah, I mean, we've talked about how it vibrates on it works on the GABA-A receptor. It also works on the one of the serotonin receptors, 5-HT1A. I suspect it works on the adenosine receptor, and what I like to say Uranus, it's nowhere near as funny when you say it. So I was taught to say it. But Uranus rules the electrical connections within the nervous system. So so that's very astute, I think. And I think that you're quite right that the whole thing of when things so the other thing that it rules is unexpected change. So, you know, when you look at somebody's chart, astrologically rather than medically, if you can't really ever predict what's going to happen because of Uranus. We just know something explosive is going to happen, and, you know, maybe something gets wiped out or you get, you know, a real surprise. But what those kind of things do is rock your nervous system without fail. You know, even if somebody, like, I remember when I was writing the Essential Laws of the Mind, Body, Spirit, and talking about an excess of joy, and I used to think, well, how can you have an excess of joy, you know? But all that excitement gives you a headache, you know? It's just like, I'm so worn out. That kind of change in the equilibrium of the nervous system can be really quite difficult for people. I know my mom really struggles with just doing too much excitement is too much for her. So that idea of like settling the body after change, whether it be good change or with Uranus is usually shitty change, I think. But those kind of waves. Well, I said about the still water and the moon. The thing that when they throw the stone in and you get those ripples, that's that calming. That is Neroli, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really important. One thing I try and be an advocate for in astrology is some people go, oh, well, they're bad planets and they're good planets. And I think, Saturn obviously gets a very bad rap of being, a restriction and limitation and all that. But I think, humans are meaning-making machines and we can decide what's good and bad. And yeah, Uranus does bring unexpected change in that way. But normally, it's for a reason. It's that natural order. And I think this is why I love Neroli with Uranus is to, you got me saying Uranus. We are children today. But
I'll talk about Neroli, the Venus soils as well if you like.
Yeah. Maybe we'll say that for the masterclass. Obviously what happens then is, Neroli is going to allow you to be okay with the influences of Uranus, to be okay, because anything outside of our comfort zone, anything stepping outside of the box that we're used to living in can be, unsettling. But from an Uranus perspective, Uranus is like, well, we can't keep doing the same old, because that doesn't work. So it's a really beautiful one for being okay with Uranus's changes. And that will be quite dramatic as we get to the end of this month.
So I think the other thing that it rules as well is the individual and the collective, isn't it? So I always give the example that, and in my brain, just to let you know that I don't actually know why I'm saying this yet. So I'm hoping I have a reason for saying it by the end of it. Thank you, Spirit, for making this difficult. But when it rules, I always give the example of being in like a society. And I was in a choir for a very short amount of time before they said, you know a bit about marketing. Can you come and help us promote? And so then I was immediately in the core of the choir, in the committees and stuff. And my ideas were used quite a lot. But then they were like, the older contingent, because they were old, started to get reticent about being too much moving forward. And then what happens usually with Uranus energy is that person goes, I can do it better, and goes, I'm going to do it on my own. And then you might get some other people that come through to follow. But what's happened is there's an evolution here. So they'll go, well, yeah, so there's just like this change of doing things differently and better. And that's what Uranus is about. It's about evolution all of the time, isn't it? And I guess, thank you, I know where you're taking me now. Change is really frightening for a lot of people, and I do think it's quite a good oil for shy people who have got, stepping out into the, if you're going on to do something like university, all of those new people, or you're going on to a new job, those times where you get pushed forward and your whole body goes, I don't like this, I don't want to do this. But Uranus goes, well, actually, no, this is a good thing to do. Then I think that could be really helpful then. That Neroli is very good for settling that. I don't want to do it. Well, you've got to, so get on with it.
Yeah, and that kind of gives me a beautiful segue to kind of lead into the chakras. Neroli I love for the sacral chakra, for that intimacy, and I like to use the word intimacy. People first think of sexual intimacy, and we've kind of touched on that yes, it would be great in the bedroom, but that intimacy of just forming intimate relationships with other people, being comfortable to kind of talk about more than the weather, to unveil a little bit about yourself and get to know people. And so if when we are in new situations, when we're stepping away from, our comfort zone, and when we're meeting new people, I feel Neroli is a really good one for helping us feel comfortable forming intimate relationships with people.
Yeah, I agree. And so many threads. So first of all, the sacral chakra, of course, is orange. Of course, it's got to go there. But it's like the mental message of the sacral chakra, the root chakra, it's I need these things that I need to survive, to feel safe. But when you get up to the sacral chakra, we're going into creativity and stuff like that, because it's what I want. And this like juiciness of new energy. So sexual desire, but the desire to create, babies, but also beautiful works of art and poetry and the muses and all of that stuff. But also the sacral chakra, of course, is to do with genitourinary issues and periods. And we talked about how it helps with pain and mood. But in particular, there was a tremendous study done on, I think, Iranian students. These are usually Iranian kind of midwifery courses that do these tremendous studies. And these ladies, there was 62 students. How can I remember 62 and then not remember what country it came from? 62 students, and half of them were given, all of them were given almond oil to sniff, but half of them had 0.5% neroli added. And so for 3 days consecutively over 2 menstrual cycles. And as you would expect to see, because you always see this in the trials, you saw an improvement in the pain in the first month, but the second month was radically better. But in this particular trial, they didn't just look at pain, they looked at PMS as a whole thing. So not just like the pain, not even just the mood swings and the worries and the rattiness, but also the bloating, and all and changes in digestion. That was looking, because a lot of people get diarrhea, don't they, when they come on. So all of it was significantly improved. So when you look at a scientific trial, there's something called the P number quite often, and the P number is a statistical analysis of how likely is it that if we'd done it a different way, we'd have got the same kind of results. So there was a small improvement in the women that were even just having the blank almond oil, because placebo effect, that is a good thing. But so a P number has to be more than 0.5% or 0.5, to be statistical. And you think smaller than that is more and more significant. So after they'd had the second month, their P number, remember that 0.5 is significant, anything smaller, was 0.0003. So almost like 1 in 3 million chance of that being similar, if they with a drug or whatever. So that's definitely sacral chakra, isn't it? All of that round there is not just, it's everything to do with the womb and everything that's coming from the womb. And incidentally, just because I think it's such an important thing, menopause, it's just such an important oil to use for menopause. And again, rather than saying PMT, we'll say menopausal syndrome. So mood swings, memory fog, pain, anxiety, all of those things that come with menopause were improved right across the board in a trial that did 0.1% dilution inhalation. 0.5 was better, but just working for 6 weeks, inhaling for 5 minutes, improved all aspects of a woman's menopause. Wow.
I think Neroli is a beautiful oil to create a spritzer, or in a rollerball or something like that, as a natural fragrance for yourself, for all the different reasons we've spoken about. And maybe I can share a little bit of information and some slides in the masterclass as well. But perfume and colognes are one of the worst things we can put on our body when it comes to our hormones. What they say in the description of what's in that perfume and what's actually in that perfume are totally different. And you'll see, it's got lily of the valley and neroli and roses. And when you actually look at what's in perfume, it's not. So I would really encourage everyone to try and find the ingredients on their perfumes. You won't find it on the bottle, won't be on the box, and you won't find it clearly on any website as well. And there's a reason for that. But know that your perfumes and colognes, it broke my heart when I found this out, and I had to get rid of all my Gucci and my Gaultier and my Armani fragrances because I just knew that they weren't doing me good. But we often find that many of the floral essential oils, especially, are really great for supporting hormonal balance in both men and women. And hormones aren't just for making babies; they're a key, way that the body communicates with itself. And those artificial fragrances in our perfumes, our colognes, but also our body products as well. Everything that you've got in the bathroom is often upsetting that. Switch into these natural things, and Neroli would be a great one to bring in as much as possible.
I agree. I was watching a video the other day, and it was actually about intermittent fasting, so that's what I was learning about at the time. But the woman who was talking about it was like this high up doctor, PhDs here everywhere coming out of her arms, and she was talking about a book that she'd read by a lady who had written a book about the biggest challenge of today was the drop in sperm in men. And she was saying right across the board, we're seeing a big drop in sperm production. And she felt that one of the key things that was leading to that was phthalates. And she said, plastics and stuff like that, but the phthalates that we're spraying all over ourselves in terms of deodorants and all of that, she felt was one of the key reasons why men were becoming sterile.
We both have a thing for random numbers, and I know that there's the average woman before her morning coffee has already exposed herself to 120 different toxic chemicals, and men it's around 85 different toxic chemicals, and that comes purely from pretty much what we're doing in the bathroom.
Yeah, and I mean, this is actually I should have got my sister on now, because if I'd have known we were talking about this, she's very hot on this, very hot on like making natural things, but also hot on why are we disguising the smell of our body? She's this is one of her key sort of rants in life, really. We are so conditioned that everything about our body smells bad, but actually it's just our body, isn't it? And if you think about that, you go into the shower and you expose yourself to 120. How many different ways have you tried to disguise the smell of your body in that way?
Yeah, very much. Obviously, our body's trying to communicate with us, and if there is an off smell, then that's normally an indication of like, hey, instead of masking it, maybe there's an adjustment in your health that might need to be made.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we only have a few days left. Our masterclass is later on this week. I know we're going to talk. I'm going to share a little bit about cleansing space, and I find that a few people, when they cleanse their space, they shortfall on a few different things. So we're going to go through that. And Neroli is, for me, is one of the very queen-like essential oils. So there's a bit of a ritual that I want to share with everyone about sacred anointing. And it's a bit of a goddess or a priestess or a divine feminine anointing that you could do for yourself, in a sister circle, as a healing and different things like that. And Neroli is one of those key ones that I'm going to kind of give you the formulation and the map for that throughout the masterclass as well. What are some of the things you're planning on sharing, Liz?
Well, so very interesting cross-section then, because we haven't discussed this. So when I was looking at the oils that we've done this sort of month, there's been a lot of esoteric stuff, and we'll be talking about psychopomp work and stuff like that. And I think that one of the key areas that we're struggling with is we're giving people information about, these are the oils to do it, but giving no information about, but how do you protect yourself? How do you make sure that you have, that you are opening up your centres but closing them down and making sure you're locked down for the rest of the month? So I'll be talking about energy centres anyway, because we'll be talking about Palo Santo and GABA-A. I said we'd talk about the aura and the chakras, but I will also talk about protection, not just day to day, but actually when we're doing the kinds of work that you're talking about in those kinds of anointing things, really making sure that we're not picking up of any entities, but also not spilling out our energy onto other people too. Yeah.
Now remember that the link is below the description of this video or this audio that you listen to. And remember the secret that you want to use the discount code of fellowship, all in capital letters. That will get you 20% off as well. And we have adjusted the time zone slightly to let the Australians can join us this time. But remember that wherever you are in the world, you get the replay. So you can build these These aren't posted on YouTube. You're not going to get the masterclass anywhere unless you grab your ticket for this. So make sure you do that. So Neroli is our final one. After that we're gonna dive into another set of oils, and we haven't really thought about what we're gonna do yet, have we? So we're open to suggestion, bribes, and otherwise at the moment.
Definitely. Although I have to say, I would like to do clove next. I think that there's
Okay.
so many nice things to be said about clove.
Yeah, which is a very unique essential oil as well. Okay, so we'll tackle clove next week, and then we're gonna leave it open for suggestions, what we're inspired to, and a whole range of different things. But we will see you all at the masterclass. Make sure you buy your ticket so you don't miss out on that. And we'll be back next week for clove. Thanks for joining us. Take care of yourself. Until then.
Bye bye.